Blog Talk Radio.
There is a mystery lurking the forested areas of the world. Many have seen something, but what is it? Are they seeing known animals? They claim they walk upright, like a human. There are so many eyewitnesses. Can they all be wrong? Is someone just playing a trick on people? Or is it possible a large bipedal being could exist in the forests of the world? You have a decision to make. Do you believe it exists? These are the topics we discuss on Sasquatch Watch Radio. All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Sasquatch Watch Radio. Today is June the 11th, 2013. It's great to see all of you here. And before we get started this evening, I am going to get our co-host on the show. And let me give him an introduction. How you doing, Creature Seeker?
Oh, is that how we're going to roll now, Billy? Is that it?
Woo! It's time to have fun tonight.
Oh, my God.
How you doing tonight, Bruce?
I was doing great. That's how I got on the show, Billy.
Well, I'm sure that our guest tonight probably appreciated that introduction because he knows where I'm going with it. So, without further ado, I want to welcome Mr. Pete Willson on the show. How you doing tonight, Pete?
Doing pretty good. I just knew that was Bruce coming on.
Well, hey, Pete, I'm surprised you remember me. I haven't seen you in what? It's been like 5 years, right?
Actually, it's been almost a year. Well, a little over a year.
Oh, it seems like 5.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's been too long.
Yeah, we all miss you down here in Virginia.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I miss everybody up there too. It's like I told you the other night when I talked to you, it's Montana is a beautiful state. It's very diverse in its climate and weather. Just just the whole scenery is very diversified. But where I'm at, I'm kind of right in the middle of between the plains area of eastern Montana and not quite to the really nice wooded area of the western part. But I'll be honest with you, the weather out here is absolutely great. If you like the outdoors, there's an awful lot to do, and it's. But I do miss all my old compadres back there in Virginia, and we had a lot of good times together, and a lot of good research went on, and I really wish I could bring you guys here, or me occasionally get a chance to get back there and do some more work with you guys, and we had a lot of fun there for a good 3.5 years or whatever, and miss everybody back there.
Yeah,
well, Pete,
yeah,
I'm sure Billy I'm sure Billy misses you, Pete, because when he didn't feel like hiking out in the woods, following up on a sighting report, he'd send you out there.
Well,
what are you talking about? What are you talking about? A lot of times he was asleep somewhere.
You guys are just being mean to me. Now, I have to admit, you guys caught me at a time where, I used to be able to, had the reputation of being able to sleep upright, but, I still think you guys were just lying about all that.
Hey, you could put Rip Van Winkle to shame. Let me just put it that way.
Well, everybody's got to have some claim to fame.
So Pete, so from what you described, you're in kind of like the desert area, right?
Yeah, we're it's pretty much, you could easily say a desert area. I mean, when you get a little bit farther south, you get down to the Absaroka Mountains and stuff, which is down towards Red Lodge and stuff. When you head down towards Yellowstone, you run into a lot of mountains down there, but that's about probably 60, 65 miles from where I'm at. So we're right at the very edge of it. I mean, there's little bits of mountains around us, but it's all, it's at 65 to 80 miles from me is where a lot of the mountains are. So we're kind of in a deserty plains kind of area, which, I'll be honest with you, is not very conducive to bigfooting, but, the farther west you go, the better it gets. And, but then when you go farther east, it's more just open plains, prairie. It's very pretty, but it's just not, not Bigfoot stuff, unfortunately.
You don't get a lot of prairie squatches out there, Pete?
Do what now? I'm sorry.
You don't get a lot of prairie squatches out there?
No, not too much. I mean, there are sightings that do occasionally happen out in some of the prairie areas. For instance, if you go up to the northeast corner, which is up where Fort Peck Indian Reservation is at, they occasionally have Bigfoot sightings down right along the river. In fact, my son and I went up there last year. We got invited by some Indians up there that have a kind of a combination of ghost and Bigfoot, get together up there on the reservation every week. And we did get invited to go up there and had about a 4.5-hour talk with them and stuff. And they shared a lot of information with me about some of what their views are and some of the activity that does occasionally go on the reservation. Most of it is, again, it's like, right along the river, you got probably 500 yards on either side of the river where it's fairly heavily forested. But out beyond that, you get into, just prairie grass, which, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of activity. And from what I've heard from them, that seems to kind of bear that out. I did get a phone call right after I was up there from a gentleman from Poplar, Montana, who runs a newspaper up there. And he was telling me that his mom has a place down near the river, and she, every fall, has, hears what she, feels is Bigfoot activity at night. And, so it's quite entirely possible that they, follow along the river. And, of course, then they go down to the Fort Peck Lake, which is a pretty huge reservoir. And I know there's a BFRO sighting down at the far end of it, which, it's just one of those things. Is everything is near the water, and that I, so far put together. So you're either in the forest or you're right along the river, or kind of like we'll see a lot of other places.
Now, Pete, when you lived out east, you lived in Virginia, right?
Yeah, I was in Newport News, Virginia, there when I was working with Billy and the crew.
And so you were a member of Sasquatch Watch for how many years before you moved out?
Well, actually, I think I joined mostly right after I moved there. So I was only a member for probably 3.5 years, somewhere in there. Still technically a member, but a long-lost relative now.
How did you find Sasquatch Watch? You just do a Google search on the internet? Did you find it on the bathroom wall and the rest stop? I mean, what?
Well, I guess you know, with the I've known about Billy for quite some time, and for me, I guess the best way to describe it is go back to the beginning. And for, you know, like millions of other people back in the early in the 70s, I lived in outside of Detroit, probably about 50 miles out in the country. And I remember there was a movie that was played, and I don't remember the name of the movie, but it was around 1973, 74, somewhere around in there. And, you know, the commercial used to come on, it used to scare the crap out of me because, you know, they had this recorded scream, and I'm like, man, I can't believe that there's stuff like this running around. But, you know, the people that lived across the road from me, they used to have Native Americans used to live in their woods up until probably in the 1950s. So, and I used to go back in them woods and stuff, and, you know, you can see where the old cabin was at and all that. But, you know, when this show came on, they had a commercial, and man, that scream used to just send chills up and down my spine. And our TV was like from a big picture window. So, of course, you know, here I am sitting there late at night, you know, I'm watching this show, and then all of a sudden this commercial comes on, and I'm like, holy cow. Man, I don't know if I want to go out in the woods at that point, you know. But it really sparked an interest as far as what is this thing. And as time went by, of course, you know, you get into school and you get into college and all that, you know, and you go on to other stuff. But there was at one point back in the late 80s, I guess it was, or actually it was before that, it was in the early 80s, while I was in college, that outside of Yale, Michigan, there was a lot of reports of people seeing Bigfoot creatures. And I used to think, wow, you know, my buddy and I, we used to go with his dad, we used to go coon hunting up there. And, you know, I'll be honest with you, I'd never heard of anything at night that ever thought it was Bigfoot related, even now. And yet, people were seeing these things quite often. In fact, one of the stories was there was a girl walked out to a barn to check on her horse, and when she reached in around the door, all she felt was fur. So she's like, well, what is this, you know? So she backs up. This thing comes out of the barn, and she's staring at this thing, and, you know, and first she's like, you know, what is this? And it takes off running. Well, that was like, I'm like, holy mackerel. So I asked my buddy's uncle that lived up there, I asked him, I said, well, what do you think of this? Yeah, it's a bunch of crap. You know, he says, there ain't nothing to it. He goes, I lived up here all my life, never heard of anything. Well, you know, as time went by, there was a guy, and I don't remember his name, up in Michigan. It was a Bigfoot researcher for a while, and I tried to look him up, couldn't find him. But I was getting, at the time, I was in college, my parents would send me newspaper articles from up around Oscoda, Michigan. There's a place called Foley Swamp up there. And there was quite a few Bigfoot reports come out of there, and especially with bow hunters and stuff. And I've got a few of the old newspaper articles and stuff from back up in there. And I thought, well, you know, people can't be seeing, I mean, they got to be seeing something. I mean, not everybody can be, you know, lying or just making stuff up. So, anyways, you know, finally I graduated from college and took a job in Virginia, actually. After my first job, I was down in Indiana, which is where my wife and I met. But anyways, as time went on, we eventually moved back to Michigan. And when I was in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, I thought, man, this is a prime area up here for Bigfoot. Although my interest back then was more bow hunting and, you know, for deer and stuff like that, gun hunting for deer. But, you know, I was out in the middle of nowhere, and I mean, I used to have an old Dodge Ram Charger that used to be an old Florida conservation truck. I used to go run around back roads and everything else up there. And, you know, I'll be honest with you, I never saw anything, never heard anything. But then again, you know, back then you didn't have the information because you didn't have the internet back then. So one of the guys that I worked with, him and his brother had seen one back in Washington State. And he said basically his brother had gone drinking one night. They bought some beer, and they were going to go out and party a little bit. And he takes and they pull in off this old logging road, pulls in, they get out, and they start cutting up stuff. He said they're just getting ready to start cracking some beer. And also one of the guys sees in the headlights, he says, what is that? And they can see a dark form over towards the edge of the woods. Flip on the high beams, and here's this thing standing there. He didn't say how far away it was, but he said, you could clearly see this thing. He said the eye shine was right, nice and bright. He said it was kind of a reddish eye shine. And this thing is kind of swaying back and forth a little bit. And, man, he says they got freaked out. He said they were only there for saw that thing for just a few minutes. They decided to get out of there. It turned and walked back into the woods, and they were out of there. And he said his brother walked in the door. He said he was white as a ghost. And Larry, he's like, hey, man, what's up with you guys? I thought you guys were going to go out and do a little party. And he says, man, I don't want to talk about it. So Larry kept pestering him. He's like, what? Tell me what happened. Now, he didn't want to talk about it. So the next morning, Larry finally gets him to open up. He says, we were going to crack some beer last night, but he said, we pulled off this logging road. And he said, while we were there, he says, this Sasquatch was standing there at the edge of the woods. And he says, I don't know if it was, drawn to our truck, which was sitting there with the lights on. He goes, I don't know what the deal was, but he said, man, we got the heck out of there. And Larry was like, really? He says, whereabouts was it? And he told him, and he says, man, we used to go hunting up there with our dad. And he goes, I never could figure out. He says, I pushed my brother, he says, before about it, and he doesn't never want to talk about it. Larry said, I want nothing to do with it. And I was like, kept pushing Larry, man, tell me about it. Larry's like, he goes, not even interested. And so about that time, I went down to the public library in Marquette, Michigan, and found John Green's book, The Apes Among Us. And, man, I read that from start to finish, and I was hooked after that. I was like, man, this is interesting. So about that time frame, because of John's book, I wound up getting in touch with Grover Krantz when he was still alive. And talked to him about probably 3 different times by phone. And he gave me some pointers and stuff and, things to try and, things to do, what to look for, sounds to listen for. But to be perfectly honest, I never, ever really heard anything up in the UP that ever made me think of Sasquatch. And so it was one of those deals. Now, I had one instance, I really suspect it was the deer. It was kind of like playing tag with me. And it was one of those deals where I'd walk, I would hear it follow me, I'd stop, it would stop, I'd walk, it would stop, and then I'd walk back towards it, and it would turn, change directions, but I never found any tracks or anything. So I just blew it off as probably a deer or something. But, I never really had anything really unusual. And then time went by, and, of course, got into other stuff and, doing work and all that kind of stuff and, not having any internet and all that stuff. It just kind of, the time went by, and I wound up moving around. Wound up moving into North Carolina back in 2000. And about that time frame, there was some reports of a lot of dog kills down near the river there where we were at in North Carolina, where we lived in a little town called Eden. And but down towards Stoneville, there was a creek down there, and we see here occasionally dogs would come up missing. And I just figured somebody, saw a dog in their property and probably shot it, and that was about it. Well, the interesting thing was, later on when the internet finally came in, I found out that there was a little town called Matrimony, which was just a little community. And I used to drive through there quite a bit, but there was a lot of Bigfoot reports down in there. Now, unfortunately, I didn't know it when I lived there. Otherwise, I could have had a field day because I knew some folks that lived down in that general area. But, things being what they are, just, didn't happen. And so time went on, and, wherever I was at, I always thought about the Bigfoot stuff. And if I was out hunting or something, I was always looking for tracks and, listening for sounds and different things. But, I just guess I wasn't in the right spot at the right time. And, it is what it is. And then finally wound up moving from North Carolina, moved to Michigan. And same type of deal, just Never around there, just never got out a whole lot. And it really wasn't until I got down to Kansas, which I left Michigan due to the economy in Michigan, moved down to Kansas, worked for Garmin, the GPS manufacturer, and I used to go down to Oklahoma quite a bit. And on one of my trips, went down and met up with TBRC. And Craig Woolheater asked me if I'd be interested in joining up. He goes, even though you're in Kansas, he says, we got another person named Linda Clark who was in Kansas, lived about an hour or so from me. And he goes, he says, you guys are a little bit outside our normal range, but if you're interested, sign up. So I did. And met Alton Higgins and, all the boys down there at TBRC at the time. And had a pretty good group going and really enjoyed working with them. Every time I'd go down to Texas there for, a meeting or whatever, I'd stop and pick up Alton Higgins, and we'd talk all the way from Oklahoma City all the way down to, wherever in Texas we were going. And they had some great conversations. I mean, Alton's pretty neat guy. And so anyways, got hooked up with them and, of course, did our own little thing in Kansas for a while. After a while, TBRC kind of changed a little bit, so Linda and I decided to leave TBRC and kind of did our own thing for quite a while. And, as Billy knows, we had a little brief stint with the MABRC, which was always interesting. I'll just leave it at that. Some good folks down there, but some folks that are, we'll just leave it at that. And so, anyways, after finally in 2009, having run around Oklahoma quite a bit, run around eastern Kansas and stuff, wound up taking in had an interesting investigation over in Missouri one time. It was over in Salem, Missouri. A guy called us up, wanted us to for Linda and I to come over there, and we got over there. And we hiked around his property and spent about 2.5 days there, and really didn't find anything. Didn't really hear. We got one vocalization that was kind of interesting, but you couldn't put a finger on what it was. Other than that, we didn't find anything. And I just told the guys, I says, there's nothing that I can find here that makes you think there's anything here. But it's not to say that I couldn't leave tomorrow and something show up. Well, exactly a year later, they wound up having an encounter there. And is basically the guy's son was down there mowing grass at the gate where you come in. If you're looking at the gate and you look to the right, there's a ATV trail that went down a good little bit, probably about 60 yards, and then it kind of made a drop off, and you could follow down to some more other parts of his property. And he was mowing the grass, and supposedly he had a squatch standing behind a tree, and he said every once in a while it would pop out and look at him, and whenever he turned towards it, of course, would pop behind the tree. And then he says when it thought it was good, it would look around the corner again, and finally when it realized it was being seen more than it was comfortable, it took off running and went down off that embankment and head out on the property. And the interesting thing was the guy had a dozen game cameras up on his property. And I told him, I says, the interesting thing is where your sighting took place is the only piece of area of your property that you don't have game cameras. And there was one spot he had on there that there was a power line right away, but there was a game camera there. There was plenty of other areas that, we saw deer activity and everything else. But then we set up a little bait station, if you will. I took and brought some bacon grease with me just for something to try. We set out some fruit in another location, and then we put cameras on those. And in one spot, I set up a recorder, but nothing happened. And eventually it was time for me to go, but we didn't get nothing there. But then his son had that sighting, and then about, I guess it was last year, he was up there at his cabin and said he was getting ready to leave, and looked out across his truck. He had a wood pile that was over near where he used to have an old camper trailer. Looked over there, and he said, here's this thing standing there behind the wood pile. And he said the wood pile, which was about 4 feet high or a little better, came up to just about the waist on this thing. And he was like, holy mackerel, you know. He said, wow. So he said as soon as it know that it was seen, it took off running, which would have been technically to the north. He had another building out there that had where he kept his batteries and stuff, because he wasn't hooked into the power grid. He just ran everything off 12 volts and whatnot. He had some propane tanks and stuff out there in this building, and he kept his ATVs and stuff in there. But anyways, it ran behind the building, so he went in the house and grabbed his rifle. And he said, he goes, I didn't want to shoot the thing, but he said I was more worried about where it went and what it could do to me, because he said that thing was huge. And he said he walked around behind there, but he said there was nothing there. It was gone. He said looked around for some tracks, didn't see anything, even towards the wood pile. He said it was just, covered in grass. You could see kind of maybe indentations, but it was nothing there. He said that was the last time he's, seen it. So, I don't know. It was a beautiful place he's got, though. He's got 80 acres there. They're out in the middle of a forest. There's a neighbor that's kind of off to the north there, and I guess none of the people that he talked to over there ever go out at night. And that's one of the kind of an interesting thing. Now he'll sit out on the porch and stuff, and maybe take his ATV around, but he late at night he doesn't. He pretty much stays around right around the cabin there. But it's a great location. But so anyways, other than that, it's in 2009 there, got laid off from Garmin and out of work for about 6 months, tried to get a job, and finally took a job in Virginia there in Newport News. And, like I say, I've already knew about Billy by this time, even though we hadn't talked a whole lot. But by the time I got ready to move, Billy and I chatted on the phone, and, I told him I was getting ready to move out there, and I said, I'd kind of like to hook up with you guys. And he's like, well, yeah, let's talk about when you get here. So
that was your first mistake, Pete.
Yeah, well, it's been downhill ever since.
Now, Pete,
go ahead.
In all the times you've been out, can you actually say that you saw something that was a Sasquatch? I mean, could you say that you had a sighting?
I have never had a sighting. The only time that I had what was even close was the time that, Billy and us were up there in Partlow. When they saw the thing on the far side of the pond, I was at the back of my truck looking right at the pond, which was only, maybe 50, 60 yards away, maybe at the most. Mm-hmm. And I never saw that thing. And, man, I tell you what, I can beat myself every day for the fact that, I wish I'd seen it, but, 1:30 at night or whatever it was, never saw it. Now, Brandon and I, let's see, Billy, when was that? I want to say was that in 2010 when we got rained out that time?
Yes.
Pete, when you saw that thing across the pond, was that the time that Billy was there with a thermal imager, and he actually saw the thermal footprints on the ground, but chose not to take a picture of them?
Yeah. Now, see, I never saw it, but I saw Billy or whoever it was at the time walking down the road towards the pond, and then Brandon and let's see, who was the other person? It was Brandon and somebody else, Wayne, I think, that went up behind me, and they were going to try to hit down towards the dam itself. And I was sitting there the whole time going, what the heck are they doing? And, I had no clue that anybody actually saw anything. Well, it wasn't until the next morning when I said to Billy, I says, what were you guys all doing last night? And they said, well, that's when we saw the Squatch on the far side of the pond. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And here I am the whole time watching everything going on and don't even see this thing. And I said to Billy, Billy, did you get a picture of it? And he goes, I said, you got a camera on that thermal, don't you? And he goes, yeah. And I said, did you get a picture of it? And he goes, no. He says, I was trying to find where my gun was at. So and he was concerned where the thing went. And I don't blame him. I mean, pitch black as it was. But, I mean, in the head, in the rush of everything and trying to figure out exactly where it went, to shoot the picture, well, that's just the way it goes. And, but, doggone. Now, an interesting thing. One time when we were out there, and I think this was on the expedition in 2011, what's his name there, the Billy with, where's the geologist there?
Tom.
Tom,
exactly.
He's now known as Tom the Trespasser.
Yeah, yeah, a whole other story. Well, Tom and I was sitting together at the field, or at the woods there, or at the far back of, in Partlow there. We were sitting back there with a parabolic, both of us listening out of it, and we could hear something throwing logs and rocks and stuff into a pond back there. And we were probably, 75 yards maybe from it, but, with the parabolic, it seemed like it was just, maybe 20 yards away. And we're sitting there listening to it, and something out there just having a good old time. And him and I are looking at each other, and it's like we're recording it and stuff and recording the audio from it. We could hear something start walking, which was the little creek line that led up to the dam where we were all basically camped at, which led up to the ponds. And you could hear the foot tracks as it walked up. Now, whether or not we should have went running off after it, that's hindsight, I guess. But we listened to it for a good ways and finally went out of sound. Probably about 45 minutes later, it started getting darker. And at one point in time, that's when Melissa said, "Hey, I think I see ice shine over towards the dam." And I got to thinking, I was like, I don't know what it was, but could that have been a squatch that walked up, to see what was going on after it played in the pond and walked its way up? I don't know. We never found any tracks, on other occasions along there, but, I don't know what it was. Now, I will say this, one of the outings that we had, I saw something that I've never seen before, and that was an orb. One day, I don't remember what day it was, but there was one day that, let's see, what day was that? I want to say it was on Thursday. Anyways, Gary Kendrick on a Tuesday, I think it was, saw the blue orb and the white orb, kind of bouncing around off each other. Later on that same week, myself and, boy, talking about a brain fart. From up at Nezra.
Mike Kilman.
No.
John.
No.
Trying to think. Who else came from Nezra? Oh, Dave McCullough.
Dave McCullough. Dave and I was sitting together up on a trailer overlooking the field that basically was the creek that we were just talking about. One side of it was the field that we were overlooking. And I told him, I said, well, I got to go use the boys' room over here. So I jumped down and took care of that. And as I was turning around, I kind of had a pistol on me, so I kind of shifted my gun. When I did, I kind of looked up, and here's this orb about the size of probably a soccer ball, going between about 40, 50 feet up between two trees. And what was interesting, there was a house behind there that had a mercury vapor light. So part of it was kind of lit up a little bit already, but this orb was like a bright yellow kind of color, and it actually shone its own light onto the trees, on the leaves and stuff, as it passed between the two trees. And I was like, holy cow, this is really cool. So I hollered over to Dave. I said, Dave, get over here and check this out. So he jumps down off the trailer, comes over there, and he gets a chance to see it just as it went behind some trees and disappeared. But, it was pretty cool because, I've heard about it out there, but I've never seen anything like that before. And then there was a time where Billy, you and I were hiking. In fact, I think it was the same night that Gary had saw the two orbs that he was talking about. We saw that red glow up there.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And that was pretty funny because, here we are. We're hiking along there inside the tree line. Probably maybe 10 yards, maybe inside the tree line.
Yep.
Heading to the north, and we got it just about straight across from where Gary had been at in the field with his Jeep. And it's kind of grown up. I mean, there's probably 15-foot, 20-foot trees there. And but we're in these, inside the big tall timber. And Billy and I had talked about, stuff before, and paranormal stuff and whatnot. He leans back and he says to me real quiet. He goes, "I've got a weird feeling." And it seems like we didn't walk about another 15 feet, and all of a sudden, he stops. I run into the back of him because I was listening behind me with my parabolic dish, not paying attention exactly where he was at. And then all of a sudden, I run into him. Billy stopped. And by that time, I kind of look around to see what's the matter. And, man, all of a sudden, here's this red glow. And it was up ahead of us. And I started listening with my parabolic. Couldn't hear nothing. And it kind of reminded me, and from my perspective, kind of reminded me of it wasn't foggy, but it reminded me of a fog and how when you shine a flashlight, how the whole area kind of glows. But this whole thing was glowing up ahead of us, and it was, I don't know, how far off the ground would you say that probably was, Billy?
It wasn't.
I mean,
it was
fairly low.
Yeah, it was
4 or 5
fairly
feet,
low.
maybe?
That's the reason why I got on the radio and asked if somebody was up there walking around with an red LED on their head.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this thing was bright though. I mean, it was like it was kind of big around, big, and I don't know how long would you say that lasted for?
It was, I don't know, maybe 3-4 seconds, but at most.
See, I thought it was probably like 20 seconds or so. I mean, it was
unless
a little bit.
Unless you saw it longer than I did. Once I saw it, I was ready to back up.
Yeah, you had a roadblock. You couldn't go backwards. Well, after it went out, the woods went entirely back to normal, and we walked forward up to that general spot, or we thought it was that, but didn't smell nothing, didn't see nothing, didn't hear nothing. I had no idea what it was. It was really interesting though, and then after that we just continued on our hike, and that was the way it went. But there's been we had a lot of activity out there in Partlow. I mean, we had times where the property owner had rocks being thrown, and myself and that other tall guy from up in Ezra. Him and I walked up there to go up there to sit with the property owner, and we continued to have rocks thrown. I started throwing rocks back in different directions just to try to figure out where they were coming from, but we never could figure it out. We had the thermal imager up there and never saw anything, but there was quite a few rocks being thrown, and it was enough to, when you walk past the general spot where the rocks were landing out in the road, or driveway, whatever you want to call it, they would quit while we walked through there, and then all of a sudden they'd start picking back up right after we stopped up there where they were at, and it was kind of interesting. But,
yeah, that
sounds like you had a lot of interesting experiences, Pete. You've met some interesting people. You mentioned fans. You're like the Forrest Gump of Bigfoot.
Well, I don't know how to take that.
So you mentioned going out with Brandon. Do you know that at this Cabela's event earlier this year that Brandon and his wife came out and they sat in the back row and were carrying on, and they turned this really nice event into like an R-rated show that you would see on Cinemax.
Yeah, I do believe that, because you got to remember, Brandon's a rebel. I mean, he's a country boy. And, if something's getting boring, you got to have some fun. So, I can perfectly see that. I mean, who else goes out on a winter drive and, hey, let's just put the truck in the ditch and spend the night?
Yeah, well, I must be old-fashioned, but, a Bigfoot conference is not the time to be, asking your wife for a little something in the back row. Well, you just got to remember, any time is a good time. Yeah. Well, so when you've gone out with Brandon, can you recall any memorable experiences you had with Sasquatch Watch? I mean, besides the ones you already talked about, where they just stand out as very memorable, whether you saw something or whether it was just a nice.
Well, we had one interesting thing. We went out on a winter. Let's see, when was that? Was that winter of 2011 or 2012? I don't remember now. They all blend together.
I think it was 2010 again.
It may have been when we went up there towards Brandon's up there in the mountains there.
Yeah, I'm wanting to say 2010.
Well, anyways, while we were there, we went out on a little day hike. There was Jason, your son, and myself and Brandon. We decided to go up towards. They had a little lake up there, a little water reservoir or whatever you want to call it. And so we went hiking up there, and man, I tell you what, it's some pretty country, but man, that was steep going up that top of that dam. Well, Jason and I went up there, and of course we were a little bit bigger boys at it, especially at the time. And so Brandon, being as skinny as he was, he wasn't huffing too much, but Jason and I was kind of feeling it. And so we decided we're going to sit down on top of the dam here and enjoy this nice, beautiful overlook on the far side down there. There was some patch of woods and whatnot. So Brandon says, I'm going to run down there and I'm going to go hike around there a little bit. And we're like, okay, yeah, we'll wait right here for you. So Brandon goes hiking back in there, and at one point, I see something black down there move amongst the trees on the far end of the little lake reservoir or whatever. And I said, Jason, did you see that? And he goes, no. He said, I didn't. I missed it. And I said, well, I don't know if that was Brandon or not, because I thought Brandon was down on the right side, if you will, as you're looking out there. And this thing was like dead center across from us, walking amongst some trees. So it started getting a little bit towards dusk, and this was probably about 45 minutes to an hour later. We're looking at our watches. Jason was like, well, Brandon finds his way back because his walkie-talkie was messing up, so we couldn't communicate. So finally, Brandon comes walking out on the trail on the left side of these trees. And I said to Jason, man, he's awfully small. And he's like, well, yeah, it is a good ways over. I said, yeah, but this black thing I saw, which I just barely caught a glimpse of, was a whole heck of a lot bigger than that. Because, I mean, if I put Brandon over there on that little road down amongst those trees, I mean, he'd be about half the size of this thing. Now, granted, I don't know what it was because I didn't get that good of a glimpse of it. I don't know if it was a Squatch or not, because by that time, when Brandon finally got back to us, it was almost dark, so we decided just to head back at that point. And but I don't know what it was, and unfortunately, we never got a chance to really get back up there because we wound up leaving the next day due to the weather that was coming in. And since we started getting freezing rain and everything else the next day, we decided to, pack it up and head home. But, was it a Squatch? I don't know. I mean, it could have been. Do I think it was a black bear? I don't really think so because, I mean, black bears typically, walk on all fours. They're, not that tall. If they stand up on their hind legs, you're almost the size of a person. But, this thing here was substantially taller, but I only caught a glimpse of it. So I can't honestly say it was a Squatch because I don't really know. But it was interesting. I mean, we know that there's a lot of, reports up in that area. I mean, we were only, a few miles from the West Virginia line.
Now, Pete, you have some very specialized equipment. I remember that when we were on that expedition down there in Partlow, I had my little tent, and you had
your little tent, the Taj Mahal.
Pete, let's stay focused here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, you had your truck, and you had it specially outfitted. Like, you had, batteries in it, and you had, a bed back there. I mean, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, because I consider my truck to be my base camp. And so, therefore, it's four-wheel drive. The truck I had at that time was, my Ford F-150 four-wheel drive. And in the back, I have a construction topper type top on the back, and it's set up with what they call a bed rug in there, which is, lines the bed of the truck with, nice comfort, type stuff, and I throw a twin mattress in there. I usually have a battery, 12-volt car battery in a case back there. I have side lockers on each side of the cap, which is where I put all my gear into, little duffel bags, and I stick those in there and get about, 4 of them down each side. So I have all my casting stuff, all my, evidence bags, all that kind of stuff I have in there. I have my game cameras, in a couple of them. I have my parabolic dishes that I got, my binoculars, my night vision stuff. All that stuff is in there, and then I've got my sound blaster, that I usually carry with me. That's all in there. And of course, then the cooler goes in it's an extended cab, so I stick the cooler in the back of the truck and all that stuff. And on one of the trips, I had a camping trailer set up with a microwave oven, and it had a 2200 watt inverter with running off 2 batteries. So I have AC power anytime I need it. So it's kind of fun. Like I was telling Billy just before the show come on, out here I bought me an old 84 F250 Ford extended cab. It's got an old 6.9 diesel, but the truck runs great. It's 4-wheel drive. Out here in Montana, it's 60 miles between towns, no matter which direction you go. So the diesel gets great gas mileage, and and it's diesel out here is very popular. And right now I'm looking for a pop-up style truck camper that I'm going to put in the back so I can have, camping facilities no matter where I go, whenever I want, that sort of thing. So anyways, you got to have your usual flashlights and, your backpack and all the gear. It makes it easier that way.
Well, one thing I remember about you, Pete, is that you're not really a guy who likes to rough it. You got that little F-150 converted into an RV, and then I remember, we're trying to cook our dinner over that little campfire. You basically called your wife, and she came in and cooked you like a 5-course meal.
Well, who said you got to rough it all the time? Bruce, I got to be honest with you, though. It's, you have no room to talk because you're the one that came out with the world's biggest tent.
Pete,
you could have sent a platoon of soldiers in that tent.
It's barely 6'12". Barely.
Yeah, but what about the big screen TV and the computer?
Well, you know what? It's 36 inches is not a large screen TV anymore.
Well, that may be. You're going to have a 52-inch next, I know. Now, I've got a little laptop computer. You brought, half the Pentagon with you. So, you got no room to talk. I did not have a generator, but you had a generator strapped to the back of your vehicle. So, I don't know. You're almost at odds with me there, buddy.
Pete, I needed that generator to run the DVD player. It's not my fault. Okay?
Shit. It's not my fault. Yeah. Okay. So when are you coming out, man? You're going to bring your motor home next time?
Yeah, I'll come out anytime you want. Just tell me where the Squatches are at, and I'm there.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. Here in Montana, from the research that I've done and some of the contacts that I've made, I want to go and do some research between Helena and Great Falls, Montana. There's some areas up here along the river, along the Missouri River, that I think hold some pretty good potential due to history of sightings. And, just the problem right now is I'm out of vacation time. So as soon as I get some more at the end of this month, I've already got some plans. Of course, I'm also on the board of directors for the AIBR, and they're got something going on here in the summer, which, I may try to get out to California if I can. But, I like to spend some time in my backyard here. And, of course, the Finding Bigfoot crew is here. they had a pretty good turnout, and I understand there was some pretty good, interesting reports that were not that old. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it. I got invited to go, but work-related problems. I stayed and work on a stupid airplane. Wasn't able to make it out there, but anyways, they supposedly had a pretty good turnout and stuff here. I guess we'll have to wait for this show to find out what all went on, but I didn't get invited here this past week to go back up to Fort Peck, up to the Indian Reservation to spend some time up there with them, so I'll probably do that later on this summer, because the one good thing here in Montana we don't have is humidity. So
yeah.
we could go all year long and not have too much of a problem.
Yeah, I'm sure you would like to scope out your backyard, because then it's easier to have your wife cook you your 5-course meals.
Well, absolutely. And as I upgrade my lodgings, and get a camper set up going here with my pickup, and stick the camper in the back, I'm going to be a little bit more comfortable, and and I'm just going to say to myself, I just feel like Bruce right now. Life is good. You got to admit, Billy. Billy's a great guy. He's awesome. I got a lot of respect for Billy. The problem with Billy, though, is that his lodgings is a tent. Okay, a tent's fine, but you really got to have a tent that's, you just got to have 2 rooms and be able to have the big screen TV and all that. Billy's just not into that. I like comfort. I don't mind roughing it, but why rough it? That's what makes it. There's hotels, but why go to a hotel when I could go to Bruce's tent?
Yeah. Sleep on the blow up.
A wrong idea. Honestly, my tent's not that big, and I don't know why you guys are just giving me a hard time about it.
Well, it's not that big. Okay, so it's 12 feet wide and 14 feet long. It's not real big. But is that what it is?
Well, next time I say we take one side out of it, because I don't like it when my truck gets wet and I can pull my truck in there.
Well, the fun thing was, speaking of trucks, that memorable time when I brought my son with me, and you and I, and let's see, who was it? It was just you and I, Brandon, and my son and myself when we were up there in where was it? I was up in the.
Oh man, I remember that. It was cold.
What was it? That was January of 2012, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was cold.
Oh my God, it was cold. All I know is we stopped in whatever the little town was up on the mountain, because it was the only place we got there. Because I told my son, I said, well, we're gonna get there early, because I know you guys, we're gonna get up there the next day. And I told him, I said, I got a bit of a drive, so I'm gonna go up the night before. So we got a hotel. Well, I should say it's a motel. Nobody was there except for us. Of course, it was winter, snowing. It was pretty though. But anyways, we go in there, and I pay $79 a night for this place. The only ones there. The guy says, well, you'll have to turn the heat up a little bit. So I turn the heat up. And, this place is freezing. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I can see my breath in our room. I said to my son, I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll turn the hot water on so that, add a little steam to the air, and it'll feel good. Well, the only problem was the drain. There must have been old crap in there from last year, because, man, did that thing stink. And it's like, the heat was like hot water heat, in the radiator. So it never did get warmed up. By the next morning, it got up to like 65 degrees in there. Wow. But it was like 13 degrees outside. So here's Billy, Brandon, and I up on top of this mountain, up there between West Virginia there in Virginia. We're right up 4 miles from the border. Up on top of this mountain, it's like 35-mile-an-hour winds, and we're up there doing wood knots and stuff. Well, you know what? If there was a Sasquatch around, I think it was just saying, you guys are a bunch of idiots. We're down here in the Cedars, man. We ain't going up top of no stupid hill where the wind's blowing. No. But, it was a fun trip, though. I mean, we had a great time. And, it's always fun getting out doing squatching. I mean, even when you don't have any luck, it's just fun going out and being with people that you have a lot of fun with.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I still have yet to find those people.
Oh, shut up.
And the bad part is, I mean, the Sasquatch community, I mean, let's face it, sometimes we're our own worst enemies. Instead of working together and trying to solve a problem, everybody wants to be the first one that thinks they're going to make the $1 million. And you know what? If that's all it's about, you might as well just quit and go home. Because I'd much rather just go out there and have the fun, have the camaraderie, see what evidence you can find. I mean, absolutely try to find, what you're looking after. But I mean, if you're so wrapped up in it, so wound up, and so dog eat dog, where's the fun in that?
Well, I got one for you, Pete. Were you there the year down in Partlow when we did that expedition? I came back and someone had put a for sale sign on my car. Were you there that year?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Were you involved with that? You son of a...
What? Would I be involved in something like that? Absolutely. Yeah, well, maybe a little bit.
We were hoping somebody would actually come by and buy it, but, it didn't happen. The best part, Bruce, really, I mean, the best part was when you were driving away.
Well, thanks, Pete.
Nah, I'm just kidding.
I really appreciate that.
No, actually, I mean, you do pretty well. I mean, so, the one thing that I really got to remember about you, though, is when we went out to, where was it? That was out to, Cracker Barrel for breakfast one day. And I couldn't believe how much you could eat.
Oh, wait a minute.
I mean, I was impressed.
You were the one who had that lumberjack special, which was everything but the kitchen sink.
Yeah, but you had the lumberjack special times 3.
No, Pete.
It's funny how we all have a pretty good memory of that, and Bruce seems to have amnesia.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I will say one thing I really miss about Virginia, though. I miss that little place, Billy, that we used to go and get those subs.
Oh, yeah.
The steak and cheese. Man, I miss that place.
Oh, yeah.
That's gonna make me hungry. I think I may have to go up and eat some dinner here in a little bit. That's making me hungry.
That place was good.
Oh,
that probably has the best steak and cheese sub anywhere, Billy, I would say. I haven't had a better sub yet.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that was good. No doubt about that.
Ain't that funny how everything comes back to food?
Well,
yeah.
You act like you're surprised about that.
By God, we may not have found Bigfoot, but we found the best steak and cheese sub, damn it.
Well, you got to have a little fun.
Pete, in all seriousness, Pete, you're absolutely right. When you go on these expeditions, certainly we take the research seriously, but you got to have fun.
Absolutely.
And it's really the good times you have with your fellow researchers and friends, and those make the memories. And so even though you weren't able to collect any evidence or you didn't have a sighting, you can look back on it with fond memories, and that's one of the things that really makes me keep doing it, because it's just the great people I've met. Unfortunately, none of them are on this call right now, and just the camaraderie that you have with these folks.
Well, the interesting thing is, it's always, when we go out on those expeditions, we all go out and, we try to find our foot tracks. We all try to find, hair samples. We always try to, it's always such a good time to try and compare notes with each other. Try to, hey, maybe let's try this or let's try that. It's just like when we went out and, we've played Bigfoot calls and we've had, certain, responses. And, but then there's those times when we've played those baby calls. And, man, all of a sudden things just suddenly spark up, and then it's like, wow, we're actually hearing things move around. It's people hear things in different places, and then it leads into the wood knocks, and then you hear wood knocks back, and it's then everybody's like, wow, that's cool. But hopefully we take from those expeditions, we take that information with us, and then we go somewhere, like myself, go somewhere else. You try the same stuff, or you try other stuff. And, we're always able to, you've got friends in other places you can always compare notes with. And, and I think camaraderie is the one thing that I can say with Sasquatch Watch of Virginia that we had was we had a good group of people that really, we were out there to really not only have a good time, but really do something on a positive note. And, not out there bickering about stuff or, hey, I want to do it my way or, whatever. Man, you figure when we had, 30-some people out there with, 5 different Bigfoot groups from 10 different states, and we had no problems at all. That was something that's unheard of. You look on the internet, and, man, everybody wants to chew each other out and, spit each other out. And, this group's talking bad about that group and everything else. It's like, I really feel good knowing that, man, we were a cohesive group. If I didn't care so much about Sasquatch Watch of Virginia, then why would I come out here to Montana and create Sasquatch Watch of Montana?
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know what you're saying about there was no problem. Someone put a for sale sign on my car. I didn't see where there was no problem. We didn't actually sell it.
We were just trying to get some more research money.
There wasn't enough traffic. If we could have had more public to see it, I think we would have been successful.
Yeah, well,
we should have,
right.
We should have put it up on Craigslist, and it would have probably been better off.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Bigfoot research vehicle for sale.
Right.
Little miles.
Yep.
See,
well,
$29.95.
To Billy's credit, we did, that was sort of a monumental event to have all those groups together and to, we just all got along. There was no drama. And, it was just a really fun time. And it was at a time, I recall, when, Bigfoot groups really didn't have a good reputation for getting along. And, part of that is probably deserved. But I just remember that, it was just a really good time. And it was almost like we were all just one big group, even though there were 30 people from I don't know how many different states. And there were, like you said, 5 or 6 different Bigfoot groups in attendance. And it was just, really enjoyable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's like for myself now, I kind of take my view is I take a kind of a low profile of stuff. Not to say that I've never put my foot in my mouth. Everybody knows that. But, for the most part, I don't get on too many of I don't, get into the old talk shows that much. And, I try to stay off a lot of the forums and stuff only because it's just, like I say, I put my foot in my mouth before, and I'd rather take the lower key approach and just, go out and do what you can do whenever you can do it, and, stick with people that that are, kind of like-minded, and, I'm not into the far-fetched ideas that some of these people have gotten, and, I think it's a flesh and blood animal, plain and simple, and, and I think that's all it is. As far as, all the other crazy ideas, well, everybody's got their own opinion, but, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good attitude to have anyway. It's just, I think that when you keep things simple, it's a little easier to swallow.
Yeah. I think it's more rewarding too.
Yeah. But I think the key thing that you said tonight was, we're not going out. We haven't proved the existence of Bigfoot or anything like that. But one thing that we have done is we've proved that people can go out in the field and have a good time, and doing the research, and and we can make friends with each other no matter where we're from.
Well, and also, too, to go along with it, it's not like that we haven't found, evidence. I mean, we found foot tracks. We've had personal sightings, although I'm still waiting, but, that's beside the point. I found one time, like I say, 3 consecutive foot tracks down in Oklahoma that was rather interesting for me, and it happened over a 2-hour window. And it was a deal where I came back to the field. I was the first person back, and just happened to walk down to the river and down to the little creek, and that's where I found 3 tracks that were, they weren't terribly long. I mean, about 13 and a half inches, but they were about 5.5, 6 inches wide. And what I really thought was interesting, you could see the mid-tarsal break in each one. You could see how the toes had splayed out, like they were, shifting of weight and stuff. And it was in really fine gravel. So, we tried to cast it, and it just didn't work. I mean, all it did was pick up the gravel and got no detail out of it. But, I took some photos. Unfortunately, it was on a cell phone that I had at the time, and the phone died. But I still got them somewhere, but I don't know where they're at. But anyways, but it was 5 feet. What got me was it was 5 feet between the toes of the right foot to the heel of the left foot. And when I tried to step that off, I was less, about half that much. So I thought, well, man, this thing's got a pretty good stride. And, when you look to where the 2 right feet were, obviously there's another 5 foot to the other one. I was pretty impressed because I'm like, the weird thing about the whole situation was I couldn't find any more tracks before that. And I couldn't find any more tracks after that. But the ground was, it was pretty hard, but it was just in this one spot. And I was like, man, this is pretty cool. Now, this piece of property is the same piece of property that I'd had another run-in one time, was with some other researchers. And we had heard a scream. And about 9 o'clock at night, off to the north, we heard some coyotes running around. They were yipping and yelping and stuff, and then we heard a scream. So we were all kind of laughing, Bigfoot found the coyotes or vice versa. And we didn't think a whole lot more of it. Well, about 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night, the coyotes had moved right up, just right 20 yards from our camp. So one of the guys says, well, I'm going to go get my pistol in case they decide they want to run around here. There's about 6 or 7 of them. And they're all yipping and yelping and stuff. So he goes, just for the heck of it, he said, I'm going to turn on my headlights into this field. So he turns his headlights on, and one of the guys goes running out into the field, and he thought, well, if there's anything out there, maybe I can spook something up. So he gets probably about 50 yards from us. I'm standing over by my trailer I used to have attached to my truck, and I've got about a million can of power light that I'm shining on the ground so he can see where to run, because all he had was a little mag light. Well, as soon as he got out about 50 yards from us, far corner opposite from where we were at, something let out a scream. And this scream was, I still remember this, it was like so loud. And of course it's dark, it's winter time. I mean, it's, their sound carries pretty well at winter time, but this thing was loud. And I remember thinking that, wow, this thing really had packs of volume. And, it was a lot louder than these coyotes that we were hearing. Well, no sooner did that thing scream, all these coyotes went running that direction. And as soon as you got to where that scream came from, and when the coyotes got there, everything went dead silent. I mean, there was no sound, there was no owls, there was no night sounds. I mean, there was nothing. And I was like, wow, that's kind of freaky. I've never really run into that where the night sounds like that had quit. And it stayed that way for probably about 10 or 15 minutes. And then eventually the owls came back and everything went back to normal. Don't know what it was. Never got it. We had a few game cameras up, but never got anything on them. But it was interesting. The volume was what got me. I probably walked back to some of the other guys who were there, and I was like, what the hell was that? That was the first time I ever heard anything like that.
Well, you know what they say, Pete. if you ever get a witness that says, you know, how do you keep these things away from my property? Just put up some game cams.
That seems to be the case. I mean, I know TBRC's got a bunch of them up. They've, you know, not had a whole lot of luck catching anything. It's, you know, it's hard to explain why. I mean, I don't know if they can, you know, smell it or just, you know, are they that in tune with their surroundings that they know when something's out of place? I don't know. You know, I don't have an answer for it.
No, I don't think none of us do.
So.
Well, I tell you what, we've been in the archives here for 10 minutes. we went off live air, but I think we had a good time. I had a good time.
Well, and now sometime we can do it again, and I'll fill you in on some of the reports we've had up here in Montana, and you know, some of the activity that'll be going on this summer. Like I said, I got to plan, try to plan a trip up to Fort Peck up there, especially this coming fall. Because fall time is when they seem to say, you know, the Indians up there report more of their activity along the river.
Right.
And so I kind of would like to get back up there. There's some areas that they call the Badlands up there, which is not much trees, but it's very rugged. And in some of that area in there, they say there's caves and stuff, and you know, some of the Native Americans feel that they, you know, stay in some of those caves. And so I kind of would like to go up there and look around. We did have, I guess it was towards winter, we had a rash of all things, UFO sightings up here between Lewiston, Montana, and Great Falls. The interesting thing about that is you guys have all heard about the nuclear missile silos that the United States has. Yep. Well, that whole area from Lewiston over towards Great Falls, or Great Falls is an Air Force base. But there's a whole bunch of missile silos up there. And we've had a whole bunch of UFO sightings up here this fall, into winter. So, you know, I didn't get a chance to get up there and check it out because it's about probably about 120 miles up there. It's about 100 miles to Lewiston. But, you know, for there west, it's, you know, a good little ways, obviously. But we had a whole bunch of
Lewiston's right on the border, right? It's right near Washington.
No, you're probably thinking of Missoula. Missoula is probably about, you can see on the western side of Montana, you got Idaho. And then you got Washington on the other side of that.
Well, because I rode my motorcycle through that area, and I'm pretty sure I rode through a town called Lewiston.
Okay, Lewiston is, if you look at where I'm at in Billings, Lewiston is almost directly north and just very slightly, in fact, if you went north out of Billings, where it kind of would intersect, I mean, it's like 30 miles to the west. But let's see, I'm looking at the map here right now. It's 86 miles or about from Billings to where I pick up Route 87, and then I'd have to go 31 miles west to hit Lewistown.
Oh, Lewistown. I was talking about Lewiston.
Now, Lewiston. Now, that's in Idaho.
Okay, yeah, because I remember that's where the Nez Perce is, right?
You know, that's a good question. I'm not really sure.
Anyway, it was a couple. That was back in 2009.
We do have a lot of activity. I say a lot of activity up in the Flathead Indian Reservation, National Forest, and all that.
Yep.
There's a lot of reports and stuff.
You know what? I think I was thinking of Lewiston, Idaho, Pete. So
you probably are.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you go up on, let's see, that's Route 90. Once you take and go 90 out of Montana and keep on going, you'll go right through Lewiston.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful up in that part of the country.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. So.
Well,
but anyways, there's a lot of Bigfoot reports up around Great Falls, and then between Helena and Great Falls. I mean, along the river and stuff. So there's a big batch like right in there, forest sightings, and in and around Missoula, there's quite a few also. The rest of them are kind of spread out through the state, kind of. So.
There's some nice state parks out there.
Do what?
I said there's some nice state parks out there.
Oh, yeah. There's also a lot of little parks, too, a lot of little places where you can, a lot of these national forests and stuff where, they'll have, like, little camping areas and stuff that you can just pull off. They may have 8 or 10 little campgrounds, as far as camping spots, and that's it. In fact, one of my witnesses that I have, who lives up in Alaska right now, he's going to be coming back. In fact, he should be back next month. He has had 2 sightings down in the Absarokas, which is outside of Red Lodge, Montana. And one of them was at there's a little lake up there. It's up in the middle of basically in the mountains. And so I've been up there a couple of times, but, hadn't seen anything. But part of the problem was in that whole area right through there, forest fires have come through, back in the 90s and just decimated, whole side of the whole mountain all the way back through in there. So, I mean, you're not going to find a whole lot of, cover for them. But on the other side of the mountain, towards Luther, Montana, which is another area that he has had a sighting back in the early 90s, I've been doing a little hiking back in there. That's been an area that I've spent a little bit of time with. Haven't found anything yet, but it's not to say that there's nothing back there. There's actually a BFRO report, which is kind of like on the next ridge over from where I've been. Guy supposedly took a photograph of, supposedly a Bigfoot sitting on a log, and and that's only probably 3 or 4 miles from where I've been doing some hiking back in there. But I don't know. I hadn't seen anything yet, so we're still looking.
Still looking. Well, if anybody wants to check out Pete's website, it is www.montanabigfoot.weebly.com.
Absolutely. And it's still in works. I really need to sit down and spend some time with it and get some of my reports up on it and stuff. So.
Well, if you like me, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to find time to do that stuff.
Yeah, it is. It does take some time. But anyways, we're still open. I still got. I didn't realize. Of course, I was in the. A while back last year, I was in the Billings Gazette newspaper, and I also just found out I was actually in the Missoulian newspaper as well, from Missoula, Montana. Was in their paper as well, as kind of a shared information deal with Billings Gazette. But I still have one of the reporters. Him and I stay in contact with each other. He's like, hey, if you find something, give me a call. He says, we'll come out and document it in the newspaper. So it's kind of nice that we got some newspaper people that are, take interest in it and, are willing to, give you the time of day on it. It's usually all they want to do is make you an idiot out of you. And, I think they did a pretty good job for what it was.
Now, question, since you're in Montana now, have you invested in a cowboy shirt and a cowboy hat?
Well, I've always had a cowboy hat and cowboy boots and stuff, so you just never saw me in them very often. But, it's funny. No, the cowboy boots, I do wear those, fairly regular, but the hat, I wear it sparingly. I don't wear it as much as I used to.
Yeah, they're not too comfortable, really.
Well, summertime they get kind of hot, so, a lot of guys go to the straw hats in the summertime, and, the felt ones when they're a little colder. Or cooler,
Bigfoot wears a straw hat.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's what we've been told.
Yeah, according to some people, Bigfoot wears a straw hat and overalls, right, Billy?
That's right. That's right.
Overalls.
That's right. That's correct. So,
You know, Bruce, I got to ask you, how did you make out with the flood?
Not too bad. I mean, where I am in the city, it wasn't that bad. But there were parts that were, pretty washed out.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a little hard. It's a little hard to get washed out when you're up in the suite, up in the up where the in-ground pool is, up on top of the building. I mean,
yeah.
You get up there, you're pretty safe from the water.
And I imagine that personal parking garage he's got is, makes it worthwhile. That it keeps it out of the water. Doesn't get any rain on it.
Yeah.
You guys play me.
The penthouse. That's the word I was looking for. The penthouse.
The penthouse. Yes, there you go. So what does your butler think of your Bigfoot activities there, Bruce?
He doesn't really concern himself with my Bigfoot activities, okay?
Oh, okay. Wow.
Oh, well. All right. Well, Pete, thanks a lot for being on the show. It was fun.
Sure, anytime, yeah. Well, like I say, check back a little while, and, I'll fill you in on more of the stuff that's going on here in Montana and, stuff we got going on. And like I say, we're planning on trying to get up here probably about midsummer here. We're going up to Fort Peck up there to back up, talk with my newfound friends up the Indian Reservation, Fort Peck Indian Reservation. And really interesting group of people to talk with about Bigfoot and stuff. When we were up there before, it was about 4.5 hours we spent with them. And really had an interesting conversation about, some of the Native Americans' view of Bigfoot and some of their insights in it. So.
Yeah, I always enjoy talking to the Native Americans.
Yes. Yeah, they're an interesting group of people for sure.
All right. You got anything else,
their
Bruce?
culture is so rich with stories and anecdotes. I've had the occasion to speak to a few elders myself, and it's sort of funny. For us when we talk about it, it's always like if Bigfoot exists, but when you talk to them, there's no if. They know that these creatures exist, and it's kind of a different sort of context.
Yeah. And the one thing I found is, sometimes when you hear them, discussing it, sometimes we as white people or whatever you want to call us, sometimes we have a hard time trying to differentiate the truth from what their perceived reality is. Not to say that it's anything weird or anything, but it just, where does the story end and the truth begins? For them, it's all truth. But, you try to kind of pick and choose, all right, is this, a true fact, or is this a perceived fact, or, do they really know something? Because like I say, there was a lot of details they were sharing with me the day that I was meeting with them, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, stuff that I've, learned over the years or suspect or, from reading reports and whatnot for over the years and people we've talked to, there's certain aspects that they've already known about that, and they, have a lot of understanding, but they also, if it's in a spirit world thing sometimes for them, and, I don't know, I personally kind of see it in black and white sometimes, but not to say that it's always true, but, we put, to me, it's a flesh and blood animal like anything else, and, let's face it, I mean, why would a spirit need to leave footprints,
Right.
But then again, they know that, they say, hey, this thing lives up here in these caves up in the Badland, and they follow the river. They seem to think that they migrate, during the winter months, they head more to the west, which kind of some of the reports I've heard from the Native Americans I've talked to seems to be the case. But, maybe that's their one area up there where they're at. Maybe it works that way. But, another area of Montana, like out in, Libby, Montana, and out in the western part, where you got coverage of trees year round. Maybe they don't. Maybe they stay right there.
Right.
I don't know. That's the mystery. I'm hoping to find out.
Yeah, you never know.
No,
Never
you
know.
don't. Let's face it. None of us are experts.
Nope. Not a one of us. All right. Well, thank you, Pete. Thank you, Bruce, for being
Sure,
on.
anytime. Bruce, good talking with you again.
Yeah, Pete, don't be such a stranger. Unless, of course, you're going to bust my chops, then please be a stranger.
Hang on a second. I got to take a quick nap here. Okay, there we go. Fortunately, I'm sitting down this time.
Oh man! All right, y'all. Have a good evening. Thanks for everybody for tuning in.
All right, Billy.
Good night,
We'll talk to
everyone.
you all later. Yep.
Good
have
night.
a good one. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Sasquatch Watch Radio. Remember to join us again next Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. We appreciate every one of our listeners. Thank you so much for being here.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now, and the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.